Hello, my sweet little honeys. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, I'm Anastasia. I'm a Toronto actor, YouTuber, content creator, a little bit of a social media manager. I am heavily involved in this industry. And if you are returning, welcome. We are going to talk about a crazy topic. We're going to talk about these tariffs and the tariff war and what is happening. And if this does take an effect, how will this affect us as Canadian actors and our Canadian film and television industry? And what should we do? If the tariffs between Canada and US really do take an effect and they're introduced and they're actually increased, this could have several effects on our Canadian film and TV industry. I wouldn't say particularly factors. I'd say it's quite well 50-50 for people who work in production and actors as well. So the number one thing is that there's going to be fewer US productions that are filming in Canada. As you all know, that many Hollywood productions choose Canada to come and film here. And the three big cities that they usually choose is Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Alberta is starting to get in there as well with Edmonton and Calgary, and also the East Coast has some filming out there as well. But the primarily three big cities that they come to for filming is Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. The reason why they do come is because of how cost saving it is. We offer really good tax incentives, lower production costs, and just in general, we offer a really good exchange rate for US productions to come here. Now, if the tariffs do increase, the cost for equipment, set material services is going to obviously go up. There's going to be a really big financial disadvantage for the US productions to come here. There now won't be that competitive tax incentive that we had. It is now going to be a higher tax, which doesn't make it cost effective for US productions to come and film here, which now results into less of them filming, less productions happening, less roles and less jobs opportunity for us Canadians here when the US production comes to Canada. Number two, it would be a rising cost for Canadian production. So because this does happen, most of our equipment, set stuff, film equipment, whatever, comes from the US. It is now going to be harder to get that set equipment because there will be a higher tax on it. So it's not going to be as easy to get it. And as a result, we'd have to be sourcing locally, which is not always necessarily an option and is not always available. So it's going to be a shift in how we do our productions and what is available to us to do these productions. Now, the other thing is that because our importing equipment, costumes, props, technology, etc., comes from the US, the costs in Canada will increase, as I mentioned before. So not only will the tax be higher for them to film here, it's now in general just going to be a higher cost increase in getting all these equipment from the US in order to be filming. This could lead to smaller budgets for Canadian films, potentially resulting in lower pay or fewer projects being green lit here because we are having an issue in sourcing the equipment and having it to come here. What does this impact on actors? Independent Canadian productions may hire fewer actors or reduce the pay rates. I honestly do not know what is worse, is to all of us be hired but we get paid less, or less of us being hired but we get paid the same. I don't know, because then if there's less of us being hired but we get paid the same, the competition, it's already such a difficult competitive field, it is now going to be 10 times more competitive in order to get the roles. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know what's lesser of the two evil. Now, the nice thing is, this is a positive note, there will be a potential shift towards more domestic productions. If the US productions decrease and they come here less and less of them are going to be in Canada filming, Canada might have to invest in more homegrown content, meaning in more local content, in order to sustain our Canadian industry. Streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon might be required to fund more Canadian content as per the CRTC regulations. Now, for those of you who do not know what CRTC stands for, CRTC stands for the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission. It's an independent regulatory agency responsible for supervising Canadians' communication system, including broadcasting and telecommunications. This is it regulates how much Canadian content is produced, that we're properly paid, that we're properly being hired here in Canada. So basically now Netflix, Amazon, and all these streaming platforms will need to follow the regulations. They can't go around it. So they'll actually have to fund more local content and fund more local actors, productions, all that kind of stuff, which is good for us. The impact on actors is that more Canadian stories are going to be told and filmed, meaning equals more opportunities for local actors to star in lead roles rather than just supporting roles in the US productions. This is a big thing that we deal with a lot in the US, that US productions will hire US actors as their leads and then come here to Canada to film the production and they hire the rest of the roles as Canadian roles, supporting, day player, one-liner, guest star, whatever it is. There are cases, where the lead is been hired as a Canadian actor by the US production. This does happen. This is a thing. It's rare, but it does happen. Now, what if this really does take an effect and they go towards the domestic production like vibe, what will happen is that we will, as Canadian actors, because it's going to be a Canadian project or being filmed only just in Canada with only Canadian like production and everything, we now as actors will have the opportunity to audition for the lead roles as Canadian actors. They will not hire USA because, well, of the tariffs. Kind of a little bit of a negative one is the border and work permit challenges. So there's going to be less work permits being given out to Canadian actors to go to the US. It's going to be a tighter opportunity to get into the US to work as a Canadian actor. It's going to be harder for us to get casted in the US projects. This obviously affects all of us, whether you are frequently going across the border to film or you're trying to get there now. So that is something that we'll have to consider and keep in mind. Bottom line is, I want you to remember, this is not a shutdown. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. This is not a shutdown. This is a shift. Our industry is not going to miraculously end all of a sudden and will not have any more Canadian content, period. We will just need to, honestly, and we've been needing this for a while, we need to start being on the same level as US and not depending on US as much for literally everything. We need to start creating our content, doing our jobs, getting our people out there, only using Canadian talent, only using Canadian workers, like everything. And this is the time for us to really up it. We should have upped it when the strike happened. We didn't really necessarily. So I think this might be an opportunity for us to really take this into consideration and lead as we should. This is good for us because it's going to focus on more Canadian productions. You have to network locally a bit more. You might be seeing a possible shift in job and pay availability. I just think actors and people who work in production, like behind the scenes, will just need to understand that there is a shift. You're going to need to adapt to it. You may not agree with it, and that is fine. You have 100% can voice your opinion, but you just have to have the understanding and the clarity that things are going to change if these tariffs really do take in effect. And you will have to, if you want to continue in this industry, you'll have to go with this change and with this sort of new beginning and see where it takes you. It might actually make your career. You may not agree with it, but just keep your eyes open and go with sort of open arms and see what happens and let the ride sort of take you. Now, I want to talk about that. What is it that we can do as actors? What is some things that we can put ourselves out there and see how this is going to go for us? So if the tariffs really do take an effect between Canada and US, like I said, it will impact our industry, but we need to adapt and find new opportunities to continue our industry. And so this is how you can stay ahead and continue booking work. So number one is you want to shift your focus to Canadian productions. With fewer US productions, Canadian networks like CBC, CTV, Global, Crave, etc., may increase local content. This is kind of what I talked about, the homegrown content. Streaming services like Amazon, Netflix, Disney Plus, etc. already have Canadian content quotas, which is like the CRTC regulations. This could mean more roles for local actors because they're going to be forced to just literally do it all here. So what is your strategy? Your strategy is to build strong relationships with Canadian casting directors. Okay, guys, this is really huge. Get yourself really good self-tape. You get an audition, doesn't matter if you're saying one word or 3,000 words, you do your best work. Get yourself in the class, like learn your mistakes in class, get better at your mistakes, ask your agent, hunt them down, be like, I need feedback. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right in front of my self-tapes? Because you want to make yourself known in front of these Canadian casting directors because you want to be that lead in these productions. So get your name out there, do your best. And I always promote it like, do your best, but really, no, I'm serious. Like hone in on this, like really figure out like, what is it that maybe I have not been getting right? And what can I do to make it get it right? Stay up to date on Canadian film funding, which is Telefilm Canada, Ontario Creates, etc., because producers will be turning to this funding for these projects. So get up to date to what exactly is going on, so then you know what game and what game you're playing with these casting directors and producers. This also looks good for you and your agent because you're obviously staying up to date and you're understanding how the market is working. So this looks good between your relationship with your agent that you're like, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to go. Tariffs may take effect, but I'm I'm ready to adapt and shift in the way I should in order to make myself out there and bulk the roles. So this looks good. Expanding into international markets. This is something really interesting. Obviously, we have a really big connection with the US, with our productions and everything. This is a really great chance for us to look into going international and having better relationships with international countries, like beyond just North America and beyond just the US. So you want to look kind of beyond that. So a couple of things. European productions, specifically UK, France, and Germany, often cast English speaking actors. This is really important. So take a look. Now, I do not know how it works with other countries like UK, France, and Germany. So please don't seek the info from me. I am happy to look into it and see what the situation is. But bottom line is you want to maybe even have a conversation with your agent to be like, hey, how do I expand into these countries? How do I get the work in these countries? They might actually be able to have some insight better than maybe just looking on the internet, but it doesn't hurt to also look as well. Also, if you have friends that are actors that are internationally, have internationally come here from any of these countries, ask them, what's it like to be an actor there? How does it work? How do you get yourself out there? So this is really interesting and important. Streaming platforms are growing in markets like India and South Korea, especially when they do their shows and then they need dubbing, when you dub the voice because they need someone speaking in English. This is really becoming really huge in South Korea and in India. Also in Spain as well, a lot of these Spanish shows like the telenovela or whatever they're called, they most of the time have their voices that are dubbed by English speaking actors. So this is also really good as well. And funny enough, Ukraine and other Eastern European countries have thriving indie film industries. Ukraine, I love my country, but we do really well with the indie film. They are putting out content all the time. So this could be something for you to look at into the Eastern European countries, how to insert yourself. So this could be something you can look into. Your strategies is to look into getting an international agent or a manager in that country to see how it works. Does it work? Because if you don't have a visa or a permit or whatever, is this a possibility? You want to look into self-taping opportunities for global projects. This could be something, again, you can talk to your agent and be like, hey, are you able to get me into the room for these other countries? Yes, great. No, how do we do this? Lots of times, some of these countries, like for example, my fiance who's Ukrainian, he said Ukraine doesn't necessarily have agents. You're kind of finding your own self-work. So this could be something you could look into to be like, how do I get casted in an indie film from Ukraine or whatever, blah, blah. These are opportunities you can look into. And you want to attend International Film Festival, which is like Cannes, Berlin now, I don't know how to say that, TIFF, Venice, there's a lot out there. So these are important. TIFF is obviously our Toronto one. This is huge. I talk about it all the time. You want to be quite well versed in what goes on here. So attend, watch the work and understand, watch the credits at the end of all these movies. Who was casting? How did they cast it? When was it casted? Blah, blah, blah. This is all important information for you to look into so you can understand what exactly is going on. Develop a stronger digital presence. Because social media is a big thing, a lot of these countries may look at your social media from outside of the country. So casting directors could be checking your social media. Now, I'm not saying that you need 3 million followers or anything like that, but just have some sort of presence. Make yourself known that you are an actor and this is what you do. It could honestly help you in your favor and work. It doesn't hurt. It's free. It doesn't require a lot. So this could be something that you can think of. Some productions are hiring talent from social media platforms. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on that. When I went to that industry night with Michael White, the agent from the Characters Talent Agency, he was like, not really. They don't really hire. He's like, maybe other countries do, but he's in Canada, not so much. And I do agree with him. I think it depends on the production. I think it depends on what they're looking for. It's kind of like when that movie came out with that Madison Beer, Addison Rae, one of those two TikTokers that was in that movie with Khloe Kardashian. That was different. Their goal was to hire influencers. Their goal was not to hire actors, which is why they went with a Kardashian and one of the TikTokers. I think if you're trying to make a Cannes Film Festival or a Venice Film Festival indie movie, you're not going to hire a TikToker that has never had any experience. They're going to be hiring an actual actor that has the training and experience to do the work that they have to. So there is a difference. But I think it's important to just have some sort of presence on your social media because it doesn't hurt. It can help. It can elevate your sort of platform, your resume, your look. So let's consider that. We get to just sneeze in the back. Diversify your income and skill. So this isn't something important. I've talked about this before. If the acting work does slow down, it is time for you to kind of look look at other skills that you can do. Side gigs. So for example, voice acting, which would be like animation, video games, audiobooks, motion capture acting, gaming industry is huge, guys, like really, really big. So this is important for you to look into that as well. Hosting and presenting, corporate gigs, YouTube, podcasts. This is also really good. Acting coaching, help new actors with self-tapes and auditions. If you really like know what you're doing, you want to help other people. Social media for actors, helping other performers build their brand. So these are other ways you can do it. I kind of do some of these already. For example, the hosting and the presenting, I do my YouTube, I'm working on my podcast, like I'm branching out based on just the acting coaching. I have my website, it's always available. I help new actors with their self-tapes, auditions. Like I like look in your package, I kind of help you direct. I help a lot of actually international actors that come to Canada that need some help. So this is an option as well. And social media for actors. I do my own social media. I help with other brands build their social media. So I'm kind of going past beyond than just the acting. And I think we need to come to a realization that being an actor is not just being an actor. This isn't the 2000s where you can book a solid like union commercial and make 25 grand. Like that's not the case anymore. So I think it's important that you diversify your skills because this gives you more opportunity to book and to go beyond what it is. Consider getting a US visa. I know I just talked about saying that getting the US visa might actually be harder and tighter, but if you have the opportunity, if you want to transition over there and the opportunity is given to you, I wouldn't turn it down per se. If you're really serious about working in the US like long term, you want to consider getting, it's called an O1 visa. That's kind of like the actor visa. This would allow you to work on US productions without any restrictions, but it does require sponsorship from a US company. So that is something you do want to keep in mind. This also goes to getting a visa or like a work permit in other countries like I talked about, like UK, France, Germany, whatever. Like if you want to try going international and trying acting out there and see how that happens, that is something that you can consider as well. Staying active and keep training. Guys, this is super important. I think this is a really big time. You have to get your craft in check, like get into the class, figure out what you're doing in the class, get yourself really good, get yourself better. Like you work, make your mistakes, learn from your mistakes. Like I said, build a better relationship with your agent, talk to your agent, like make sure your feedback is correct, like get in front of these casting directors and make yourself known, do the best work. Like try to get your agent to get feedback from the casting directors to be like, hey, what'd you think? Blah, blah, blah. Like it doesn't hurt to ask these questions. That you're not going to get fired and you're not going to get penalized if you ask these questions. The worst that will happen is your agent either declines in getting the feedback or your agent gets the feedback, but the casting director declines to give you the feedback. I highly recommend getting all of that sort of sorted out. My final thoughts is, yes, if the tariffs do really go, it will affect the industry. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and I will not lie. It will affect us. It's going to be a shift. It does not mean that our industry is going to stop. Guys, the film industry is never going to stop no matter what happens because film is always needed to be made. People always want to watch TV. People always want to watch shows. We are people's comfort. We are people's therapy. We make people happy. We make people cry. People turn to us in times of need. So they're not going to all of a sudden stop watching our creation and our art. We're just going to need to find other ways to source it, make it. It may take a little bit of a while to get there, maybe not. I don't know. I wish I could predict the future, but it's always good to have this information and understand how it's going to work. So if it does happen, fingers crossed that it does not, that we are ready to go. We are set. We know what we are doing. Anyways, honeys, I love you. You always know where to find me. You always can always DM me any questions. My website is always available for any coaching or any consultations, as I've always mentioned. And of course, you can always comment below. I'm curious, what do you guys all think? Do we really think the tariffs are taking effect? And if they are, do you think they're going to affect our industry? I am curious to hear other people's opinion on what they think. We're all in this together. And like I said, if you ever just need to chat and vent, I'm happy to be here and have a quick conversation. And yeah, love you, honeys. I am off for a quick walk with my honeys. Gonna go get coffee and enjoy your Friday. Bye, honeys.